Good morning and welcome to another episode of Morning Java, brought to you as always by our friends at the Get Go Cafe and Market, where they are marketing the Road Hog.
Yeah, it's the rib sandwich. If you liked the pulled pork sandwich, you'll love the rib sandwich.
I'm holding the phone up here, by the way, not because I'm easily distracted, but because Taylor put an item up on the hot button that really caught our eye about Steve Montador, who used to play in the NHL for the Calgary Flames. He died in 2015, was diagnosed after the fact with CTE. The NHL had to put together a legal argument to defend itself and said any injury or damage sustained by Montador was caused in whole or in part by his own lack of due care and fault and or pre-existing conditions and or the lack of due care of others. Okay, they're saying...
Lawyer speak.
His fault is what they're saying. He had 19 documented concussions in his NHL career with the Flames, including 4 of them in a 12-week span in 2012. Where is this going, Dale? Somebody's going to lose one of these lawsuits, whether it's the NHL, NFL, even Major League Baseball. Somebody's going to lose one.
Well, they probably will, and they'll get a jury who will be sympathetic with the plaintiff in the case, and it's probably going to wind up in the Supreme Court at some point.
I would think so.
Because none of these leagues, if they lose one of these battles, is going to say, oh, okay, here's the payout. They're just not going to do it because there's too much at risk here in terms of money, in terms of the future of the league. I've had concussions myself. I once had 2 within about a 3-week period from playing basketball. Any kind of contact sport that you undertake, there is an inherent risk that you could suffer a concussion.
Yep.
That's just the reality of the situation. NFL players talk about it all the time, that it's part of playing the game. To a certain degree, yes, there's a risk involved.
Yeah, there's a reason they're wearing helmets.
Right.
I get that part. Somebody's going to win one of these. That's what I keep coming back to. And the league can't, on one hand, make this argument with the Montador thing that it's entirely up to the player, or they even managed to pass it off, if you read that closely, onto the 31-member team. So we're not responsible for what they do either. They're responsible for the rules, the enforcement of the rules, the enforcement of the quiet periods, all that stuff. So if they're putting these things into motion now, but they didn't then, isn't that a tacit admission of guilt?
You could possibly argue that, but they could also be saying, look, we're trying to make this safer. I don't think there's anybody out there who would argue that a guy who had 19 concussions documented should have still been playing the game.
4 in 12 weeks.
Just shouldn't have been playing the game.
Nope. Let's talk about the Hall of Fame. And since you're here, Pro Football Hall of Fame made it known on Tuesday that they're going to expand their class, and my eyes bugged out. Possibly.
Yeah.
To as many as 20 inductees in 2020. Now, that sounds on its surface nuts. Like, why would you do that? But then football's just a different beast in this regard. There's a legit backlog, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, there are right now 53 players on a roster.
Mm-hmm.
You have 22 starters on both sides of the ball. And, for a long time, if you fell off of the actual voting, the initial voting, you're done.
You're done.
And so you have guys who were on the all-time list, guys who were at the time they retired, they were on all
decades, 75th anniversary, the team Rod Woodson was on. There's
who aren't in the Hall of Fame.
And when did the Veterans Committee come into?
It's been about 10 years.
Okay, which is not very long, by the way,
right.
in the life of such a thing. And the Veterans Committee, for those who don't know, has the responsibility for going back, not just over recent misses, but their most important process that they go through is through the way back.
Yeah.
Channels.
Looking at guys like, for example, Robert Brazil this year, who was a fantastic player, kind of got overlooked in the 70s because of the Steelers.
Oh, but I mean way back.
Yeah, but they go beyond that as well.
One area that I remember, I was at Major League Baseball's winter meetings when they inducted Barney Dreyfuss, the original owner of the Pirates, who invented the World Series.
Right.
Kind of a big deal. Hannes Wagner to Pittsburgh, who built Forbes Field. This guy was, as I heard from people who were on the Veterans Committee at the time, they were like, when they saw the resume, they were like, how is this guy not in the Hall? And I think that's a good thing that you're going to see that in football. And if that takes expanding the inductees, so be it.
It would be just a one-year thing, and it would be for the 100-year anniversary. but it allows them the opportunity to catch up because as things currently work now, they only name 2 guys on the Veterans Committee each year. Now, those guys usually get rubber stamped and they're automatically in, but you'll have your 5 regular inductees, and they're not going to make this a huge class or anything like that. You'll have your 5 inductees. You'll have, I believe it's 3 of the regular, the contributors to the game, that kind of thing.
The builders.
The builders.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, you basically, your other 12 are going to be the old guys.
Any Steelers? That's all anybody wants to know is we're saying
Well,
this.
I think this would give guys like Robin or like Donnie Shell and L.C. Greenwood, a good shot of getting in.
Yeah. We'll see about that. I'm all in favor of LC. I'm kind of iffy on Donnie. On the hot button theme here, continuing, I asked readers of that feature just before you had to place a call to Juju Smith-Schuster over in London, how they felt about North American sports expanding, however gradually or whatever, into London. Got mostly a thumbs down, which is what you usually get. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't have a problem with it. I think, when you look at the sport itself, if it's going to continue to grow, and if you look at basketball, you look at baseball, you look at hockey, they're all international sports. You don't just get players from North America, which is largely where you get all your NFL players.
That's true.
So at some point you need to, there are other athletes out there that can play this sport.
There's only Christian Scotland Williamson. Let's be clear on that.
But I mean, if you could find...
He's the largest man somehow in the Steelers complex.
If you can find a guy like that, a guy who's 6'8" and 275 pounds and can run...
And a competitor.
Yeah. And right now his outlet, or prior to this, his outlet was rugby.
Yeah.
So now if you take that young man and you do what the NFL is doing, you have an actual school in London that's going to teach these young men football. Maybe you find more guys like that. Maybe you find guys who can actually play the game.
Yeah, you can find, if nothing else, right, you can find something of a meat market in that stand, find people that are physical specimens for it that might not necessarily fit into sports that are more conventional to England or wherever it is.
I mean, a 6'8", 275-pound rugby player is a little excessive.
There aren't, that's quite the scrum mover there. My own feeling, and this is more from a public perspective and how the fans are over there, covering Steelers-Vikings when that was at Wembley Stadium, was, other than the fact that it was 2 0-4 teams just dying against each other. And of course, the Steelers end up on the short end of it, which made it that much more dreary to cover. But the fans, they love it. And
I mean,
they're going to get a franchise. If it's the Jaguars, it's the Jaguars. The NFL's not doing this for nothing. Well,
think about what the Tampa Bay Rays are doing now. They want to play half their games in Tampa. They want to play half in Montreal.
Which won't happen. There's no
Probably
chance
not.
of that. Yeah.
But the NFL's thinking about the same thing with the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Playing 4 games in Jacksonville and 4 games in London. They've already guaranteed 2 games to this new Tottenham Stadium every year through 2028. It's going to happen.
You've got to give them a team, though. It's not fair. That's one thing that was silly about when I remember walking through the downtown area of London where they were celebrating this game, and you're seeing all these. I mean, on one hand, it's cool. You see Pittsburgh Steelers stuff, Minnesota Vikings stuff, and you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm in Europe, right? It's got to be their own team. That's the only way they're going to get behind it.
Yeah, it really is. And Jacksonville's played a game there every year, and they're working towards that in that direction because Shad Khan, their owner, also happens to own one of the soccer teams.
What a coincidence!
Yeah, but it's going to happen. And I've covered a lot of games, a lot of football games in foreign countries. They always get good.
Now that said, the Yankees and the Red Sox just played a couple of baseball games there last week in front of 60,000 people. I wouldn't read much into that. Because they are the Yankees and the Red Sox. I can guarantee you that stadium was filled with nothing other than former New York/Boston people who were in the military. So don't read anything into that. Baseball has a zillion miles to go. And believe it or not, although you were correct in mentioning that hockey is an international sport, it's still way behind in England. And that's something that I think the NHL would do really well to address in the short-term future because actually the only connection I can think of at all is that Tom Barrasso is actually coaching right now. The Sheffield Steelers in England.